Welcome to week 5 notes and lecture. You'll be very happy to know that this week's notes are not very much at all. You have a little bit, but nothing too crazy. And that's because you're working on a chapter test and we have a lot of in-class activities. So in your notebooks, please write this down, week 5 notes. And your topic for this week is preparation for patrol. I know I'm going to be in the way here. Preparation for patrol. So, basic law enforcement is patrol officers or the patrol unit in any police department. And there's certainly lots of other departments or units like the detective unit, detective bureau. But basic patrol is kind of where most officers start at. And that is just driving around your jurisdiction, looking for any problems or issues, and really just waiting to be sent on a call, when people call in. So there's a lot of things that you should make sure that you do prior to starting your shift. And this is for officer safety and citizen safety, and just to make yourself effective on the job. So that's your heading, preparation for patrol. And there's a whole big bulleted list here. Let's talk about what are the goals of police patrol. Objectives, which means goals. Protect life and property. And life is always more important, of course, than property. But that's your first and foremost objective, protect life and protect property. And then crime prevention, stopping or preventing something from happening before it does. And, these are quality of life issues. There's a lot of things that citizens and residents, have to put up with that aren't necessarily crime, but aren't very nice to be around either. So officers, deal with those issues as well. Obviously, we do want to identify and apprehend any violators, investigate crimes once it's already occurred, and gain compliance of laws and ordinances. We have a whole traffic unit coming up very quickly. We'll be talking about tickets and accidents and things like this. Contrary to popular belief, tickets are written to get compliance because, a lot of people, they get that one speeding ticket and it's a reminder to watch their speed. And as a result, if they're a more careful driver, less accidents, less people get hurt. So compliance of our laws is going to be better for everybody down the road. That's the idea. So these are our objectives. So you want to write those down. And then our next slide, prior to reporting for duty. So either while you're still at home or when you first get to the station before your shift starts. And I can tell you, you're going to need to get to the station earlier than your shift officially starts because there's a lot of things to do. So for example, you want to make sure that you're in good physical condition. And obviously, everybody gets a little sick from time to time. You have a little head cold, you have a little stomach bug. You have to use your judgment. How off are you? Are you taking over-the-counter medication that might be making you drowsy? This is a judgment call on your part. I mean, obviously, if you're really sick, you cannot go to work. But law enforcement is a job where you really have to question, can I push through? It's not the kind of, you're not sitting at a desk in an office where, I don't feel that great, but it's not that bad. You have to really consider, are you in shape? Are you in good enough health and condition, that if you had a physical confrontation with somebody, you would be able to protect yourself? If you had to run and chase somebody, would you be able to do that? Would you be able to be alert, and be aware of everything going on around you? So good physical condition. It means not being sick, or not being sick to the degree that it really affects your safety and the citizen safety. But it also means good physical condition, also means, being in shape, good physical fitness. And it happens to so many of us. When you're young and you first get on the job, it's very easy to be in shape and to stay in shape. And of course, getting ready to go to the academy, and then completing the academy, you're probably going to be in the best shape of your life. And the trick is keeping up with that. And that gets harder the older you get, the more complicated life gets, the more responsibilities, if a lot of people, I don't want to say most people, a lot of people, get on the job in their early 20s, and then by mid to later 20s, if they're not already married, they're starting to get married and have children, and then that's a whole other time of life. And having time and energy for your own fitness, it can be hard. I mean, you really have to make it a priority. And that doesn't even get into shift work and how difficult that can be. You're working midnights, and you're sleeping during the day, but then when you wake up, you have family responsibilities, and where do you fit in workouts and fitness? It can be done, but you have to really make it a priority. And so for a lot of us, and I'm not I'm not any exception, your level of fitness can get away from you. And obviously you can look around at many officers that you see on the street, or people that and they're not ready for the Olympics anytime soon. You really need to do your best to keep your weight within your range, and to keep your cardio, and obviously good strength training. And again, nobody expects you to be an Olympian. Nobody expects you to be this, professional athlete, but you really need to stay in shape. So that's our first bullet. Training. You want to make sure that your training is updated. There's training all the time, whether it's tactics, whether it's laws, whether it's procedures, and one of the reasons we have supervisors in a chain of command is because they're, probably aware sooner than you are of changes and things that are coming down and updates, and they're the ones responsible to make sure that you get your updated training. So if they tell you you gotta do an hour of in-service today, you got to make sure you get that done. Well rested, obviously, it kind of goes along with not being too sick. You got to make sure you have enough sleep every day. And that can catch up as well. That can be cumulative if you start adding too many days together where you haven't had enough sleep. Not very good. So the last bullet on this slide is roll call. And every department, especially state to state, they have their own little words and ways of calling things and naming things. So you may hear it called briefing, or roll call, or lineup. Okay, I've heard all three. And there's probably others. And that's basically where everybody on your shift, you and everybody else on your shift, gets together in a room, like the roll call room, the briefing room, the lineup room, and your supervisor, maybe a sergeant, maybe lieutenant, maybe captain, they just go over, what are the priorities for today? What do we have going on today? Or what do we have going on this shift that you all need to know about? What are some, and I have some other examples here, what are some trouble spots? What was the activity on the prior shift? Because, just like we said, crime does not stop and start on a city property line or a county property line, right? Things often bleed over. Well, the same is true with shifts and time, right? You may have a situation that started on one shift and then continues on during another shift. So you need to find that out from the shift that's leaving. So basically what happens is the two shifts, and it doesn't have to be everybody, but often the supervisor on the shift that's going home, at a minimum, that person will stay behind to fill in the oncoming shift or the oncoming supervisor. So there's like this constant relay of information. And then your supervisor will do it for the shift that's coming on after you. So, again, remember, policing is a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year job. So it never stops, it never starts, it's just always continuing. So you need to know what happened on the prior shifts. You need to know about trouble spots and BOLOs. BOLO is an acronym for Be on the Lookout. So there's a lot of different places you might get a BOLO. They come in over the computer, they come in over dispatch, they come in from your other fellow officers. Right? So if I go take a report of a stolen vehicle, stolen car, I'm not going to be the only person keeping my eye out for that car, but I have to give the information to my fellow officers. Be on the lookout, BOLO, for the following stolen vehicle. And, obviously you're going to give a description, year, make, model, color, how many doors, where was it stolen from, and any other information that the victim might have. The victim may know or have an idea who stole it, might have an idea where it's headed, those kinds of things. But you need to put that BOLO out so that other officers know to be looking for it. So you will get and we get BOLOs for runaway kids, missing adults, especially the ones that might be endangered, and that means in danger, but it's endangered, and that elderly people who might have dementia or Alzheimer's or need medications and they're just kind of missing. You're going to put a BOLO out for them so that everybody can be looking for that person or that vehicle, that description. You're going to get these from not only inside your own department, but you're going to get them from area departments, right? Because somebody we're looking for in Albany very likely could come to Troy. Somebody from Troy could likely go to Albany or Schenectady and so on. And obviously not just the Capital District. If we had a reason to believe that this person was headed to a particular place, we're going to call that place directly and let them know. But there is no limit. I can call Texas if I want, or use the computer to send a BOLO to Texas, or I could send it to the whole country. You determine who needs to get that BOLO. But that's what a BOLO is. You want to check those things before you go out on the street, before you call in service and ready to answer calls. So, our next slide here, what else do you need to do? You need to maintain your personal and your issued equipment. So your department is going to give you some things, and then some things you may choose to buy on your own. Either way, you need to maintain it. You're responsible for that. Nobody's going to do that for you. There's no person at the department that's assigned to, cleaning your weapon and making sure that it's functional and loaded, etc. So you need to make sure you do that. Your service weapon is clean, functional, and loaded. Your handcuffs, they are functioning and they are properly cased. Those are obviously two of your main pieces of equipment. And flashlights. Whoop. Make sure your flashlight is charged and functional. And the little light bulb that's in there, they do go bad. And so you might have to change those out from time to time. Now, just like every other piece of electronic equipment that you have that needs to be charged, you have to make sure the plug, it's going to sound silly, but I can't tell you how many times My kids have said, I plugged my iPad or my Chromebook in. It was plugged in, I swear to God, and now it's dead. Was it really plugged in though? Like, did it really, was it flushed to the wall, plugged in? Um, in the case of these flashlights, you'd have to, if it was this kind, you need to make sure it's really seated in that charger. If it's not really clicked in there, it's not making contact. It's not charging. Obviously the little charger plug has to be in all the way. It can't just be hanging there. Obviously your outlet that you're using needs to be good. So it's on you to check these things before you walk away from it. Check the charging light. Is it on? Is it look like showing that it's charging? Because you know what? You're working midnights and you get an alarm call at a business and you show up and you find out there's an open door or a broken window, open window, and you need to go in and clear it and make sure there's no burglar inside. That is not the time that you want to find out that your flashlight is dead. Not the time at all. Okay. So I know, it seems so minor, but when you think about what officers do and all the scenarios that they find themselves in, these things become really big deal, or a really big deal if they're not working and not functioning. Okay, so what else? Your uniform. Be proud. Be proud of that uniform. Be proud of that badge. You should be. And part of being proud of it is having it tailored to fit your body exactly right. We're all different shapes and sizes, right? And just from regular clothes, you go try something on, it's a certain size, so it should fit. But just the way it's cut, or whoever the company is, the manufacturer, is just not a perfect fit. A tailor, a seamstress, is a person who gets paid to do these alterations. Hem those pants. There's a certain point on your shoe that they should fall. They don't want them too high. You don't want them too long. Your sleeves, you don't want those too short or too long. You don't want it so loose that it's just baggy on you, and you don't want it so tight that it looks like you're going to pop your buttons. So make sure your uniform is tailored and pressed. That means ironed, no wrinkles, no stains. No burn marks from your iron. Make sure that you've got your iron on the right setting. If you choose to do it yourself, honestly, a lot of officers spend the money to have their uniforms dry cleaned because it's just easier for them, and they know when they get them back they're going to be perfect the way that they want them to be. You need to polish your brass. So you have your badge. You're probably going to have collar pins. You may have other pins that are like award pins. You have a tie clip. There's just little parts. I mean, I'm looking at these officers here. My department, we had a whistle, actually, even though nobody used it. But it hooked to the button on the top here, and there was a cord, metal cord thing it was on, and then we just tucked it in our front pocket of our shirt. But that was part of the uniform. I don't know. I'm probably dating myself. So brass needs to be shined, so it's not getting tarnished. Wow. Tarnished or just stuff on it or whatever. And think about this, and it happens. Let's say you pull over a drunk driver one night and they decide to resist, and you guys get into a wrestling match, and now you're rolling around on the ground in the mud. You got to pay attention when you get all done. Take a look at yourself and look at your badge and your brass and clean that stuff off if you need to. Make sure your shoes are shined. Same thing. This is a physical job. You're working. You are physically working. You're walking, you're running, you're in and out of cars, in and out of businesses. You're doing a lot of stuff outside for sure. So make sure those shoes are shined and not scuffed and not dirty. Okay, and personal grooming, obviously you're going to shower every single day before you go to work, you're going to use deodorant, you're going to shave. And each department has their own rules about that. Most departments actually do want you clean shaven. So guys, that means no beard, no mustache. Not every department, and you might be thinking of some right now where you've seen officers with a beard or mustache, facial hair, but a lot of them they don't want that, and they tell you these things. Again, nobody's trying to get you in trouble. It's not a mystery. They'll tell you exactly what is and is not allowed. Ladies, the hair needs to be up off the collar, and to be honest with you, off the collar, but and I know, and and nothing against my friends. I see a lot of my female friend officers. They'll just put it back in a big long ponytail. That's okay, but the idea is that you're not giving a weapon to a bad guy. So they could grab this, right? They could grab this and really yank it and, pull my head and neck and whatever. So the bun, and I'm just doing this really quickly, but if I put it in a nice tight bun, it's clean and it's neat, and it's not going to be used against me as a weapon. And ladies, you're just not, the uniform when you are on duty, it is not the time to be as fashionable and girly as you want to be. You really need to tone down makeup and cosmetics and perfume, and really long fingernails and really like crazy nail polish. And it's hard, because everybody's an individual and everybody likes to express themselves. And every department is different with how much they let you get away with. But the fact is, law enforcement and criminal justice tends to be a pretty conservative field. And again, we want everybody to be the same when you're in uniform. You're not an individual. You represent something. Everybody represents the same thing. And part of getting that message across is everybody wears the same thing and represents in the same way. So, and nails, really long nails, they could be dangerous as well. But you're definitely not going to want hoopy, big, long earrings, dangly earrings. That's a danger. They'll get ripped right out of your ears as quick as can be. Usually most departments will allow small stud earrings only for the ladies. Guys, no jewelry at all. I mean, no earrings. What else? Obviously chains. You can wear a chain, but you want to make sure it's tucked in your t-shirt, your uniform. You don't want that. Why would you want that grabbed off of you and broken? What else? Facial piercings. Those have become very popular in recent years, but you're probably not going to be allowed to have any facial piercings while on duty. So rings, again, rings are like a wedding ring or a wedding band. That's okay, for sure. But you just have to think about your own safety. And if that got jammed or stuck on something, are you going to lose your ring? Are you going to ruin your ring? Are you going to break your finger? So you got to think about those. And ladies, if you have a really beautiful engagement ring, I sure as heck would not want to be wearing that on duty. So, all right, I think that's about it for your uniform and your personal grooming. The next thing is patrol vehicle check. You are not responsible for fixing your car, but you are responsible for making sure the basic things are working and running when you go to start your shift. So I have a little list of what those things are. So, for example, prior to your shift starting, you need to check your liquids, gas, and oil. Right? And that's in the hood. And if you don't know how to do that, you'll learn. Somebody's going to teach you. You want to check your tires. Make sure you don't have any flats. Make sure none of them are bald. Electrical, that means your lights and sirens. So if you've ever driven past a police station and you've seen a bunch of cars parked at the station and all of a sudden, like, they're all doing their lights and sirens, what are they doing? they're doing vehicle checks. It's a shift that's about to start. It's about to go out on the road, and they're all checking to make sure their cars work. Wires come loose, fuses blow, and things break. So just because that car was working the shift before doesn't mean when you go to get in it, it necessarily will be. You want to make sure it's stocked with everything that it needs. First aid kit, flares, fire extinguisher, etc. The person and again, policing is a 24/7 job, and those cars are often used 24/7. They're being driven and used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The officer on the shift before you, he might have had a crazy, crazy night. And he wasn't trying to leave you high and dry with no supplies in your car, but maybe he needed to use some of those things and just never got around to replacing them or forgot that he used them. And so it's on you to check that they're there and it's everything that you need is in there. And if not, you go get it. These are your responsibilities. Again, there's nobody at the station that's going to be assigned to do that for you. You really need to look at your patrol car as your office. And you need to make sure you have everything in your office to do your job. Okay. And the very last bullet on this slide, I cannot stress this and a couple other concepts enough. Search your patrol car at the beginning and at the end of every shift for damage and document. Things happen. In emergency services, emergency fields like we're in, stuff happens. And you might run over something or bump, back into something. You might wreck completely. If that were the case, you don't really have to. There's going to be a whole nother document for you to fill out if you completely wreck and total the patrol car. But minor things, dings and scratches. Because the officer who's coming on after you, they're going to check. Because they're not going to get blamed for something that they didn't do. So if you don't, let's say the guy before you, I keep saying guy, but I mean that generically, guy or girl, right? Before you, they backed into the dumpster behind Dunkin' Donuts. They got a big old dent in the back bumper. They don't say anything to anybody. I don't know nothing about it. So let's pretend that, so that's there when you start your shift, but you don't check. So you don't document it. So nothing's written down, nothing's documented that this damage is there, but then your shift ends, somebody else comes on, they get your car and they check. And they're like, there's a big old dent in the back fender. I'm not getting blamed for that. And they write it down. Who is going to get blamed? You. Because you were supposed to check your car. You didn't say there was anything wrong with it when you got it, therefore you did it. Period. That's just how that works. You didn't document it, you did it. So I'll be darned if I'm going to get blamed for something somebody else did. And believe me, I had my own troubles backing up in the patrol car. You just got to be honest about it. It doesn't mean you're going to get in trouble. Doesn't mean that you did anything. I mean, obviously, if they think you're being careless, you might be spoken to. You might get in trouble. But if it was just an honest mistake, then these things happen. But you want to check your car for damage before and after every shift. Maybe why do we do it after? Because you might have did something and not even realized it. So that's a reason to do it after. And this one is so, so, so important. Always check the back seat and the back floor of your patrol car for contraband and weapons at the beginning and end of every shift and after every transport. That means every time you put somebody in the back seat, you're checking it before and after. People, now, if you have an arrestee, your arrestee is supposed to be searched before you put them in the back of that car. Because if they have a weapon on them, just because they're handcuffed doesn't mean they can't get to it and use it. And there are a number of cases where an officer driving to the station or to the jail has a suspect arrested in the back seat, handcuffed, and somehow they get their hands on a weapon and use it against the officer, or even, depends on the car, but even reaching through and trying to grab the officer's weapon. These things have happened. So you have got to search your arrestee thoroughly. But again, we are human and people make mistakes and people miss things. So if you miss something, they're probably going to try to dump it as fast as they can just to not get caught with it or get in more trouble. So it is very kind, and so obviously not only weapons, but drugs, anything that they're not supposed to have, or that they know they're going to get charged with another charge if you see that or find that. They're going to try to dump it in your car if you didn't find it on them already. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is when that person is done and over, right? You've processed them, they've gone to the jail, they've been released, whatever the case may be, and then farther along in your shift, you have another arrest, and that person didn't have anything on them at all that they could hurt you with, but you didn't check your car, the back seat, the back floor, and you put them in there, and there's a weapon, there's a gun, there's a knife. So you introduced it when they didn't even have anything. And it's also a way to be able to testify in court when you do find something. Like, if I find a big bag of crack cocaine in the back seat, when I go to get you out of the car, I can testify that it's yours, because I'm going to be able to testify that I searched that back seat in that car at the beginning of my shift, at the beginning and after of every transport, and it wasn't there until you got in. Okay, so that's another big reason this is so important. First and foremost, for your own safety and the safety of your arrestee. That's first and foremost. And secondly is charges that could come. So, how do problems come to the attention of the police? And it's like people forget this. I feel like when I hear a lot of comments and things that get said, the very first bullet I have there is calls for service. And to be honest with you, that is the number one most common way anything ever gets brought to the attention of the police. Why are they at your house or the neighbor's house, or why are they on your street, or why are they in your neighborhood? What are they doing? Probably somebody called them and made a complaint. So that's what a call for service is. It's a citizen, it's a resident, it's a business owner, it's a visitor, whatever the case may be, somebody in your jurisdiction that has been a victim of a crime, is about to be a victim of a crime, witnessed a crime, and it's not always a crime. It's, we started this week's notes with, or actually we're not there yet, but does it deal with, we did cover it, life and property, safety and property. Does it deal with one of those issues? If it does, that's your area, and that's how most problems do get brought to the attention of the police. They're not there for no reason. They're not there to harass you. They're not there to just, got to make something happen. Believe me, there is enough stuff going on. They don't have to make stuff up. So that's the number one way. Citizens call the police or they call 911 to report or make a complaint of a problem or a crime. So make sure you get that written down. So sometimes, and this is probably the least common only because the statistical probability of an officer being exactly in the right place at the right time to witness a crime in progress is not very high. But that is one way that these problems do come to the attention of the police. And we started this by talking about you should be alert. You should be awake and healthy and alert, paying attention to what's going on. So you're not just driving around in a fog. You're looking, you're watching people, watching what's going on. So obviously, if you are a police officer and you are witnessing a crime in progress, you have a duty to act. So that's that's an obvious one, right? And then we have our third way that problems come to the attention of the police is officer initiated activity. Now, I just said the cops are not out there just making stuff up. Well, they're not. But what I mean by this slide is something that starts out maybe small actually turns into a much bigger deal. So I use these pictures because you can see that in the first picture here that the officer is on a traffic stop. That person might have just ran a stop sign. That's a low-level traffic infraction. Not a big deal, but and there's that Terry stop, field interview, reasonable suspicion. The officer has the right to have this car detained temporarily. And probably if they did just run the stop sign, the officer has the discretion as to whether they want to write him a ticket for that. But we don't know what's going to go on during the course of this stop. Remember, his senses, what does he smell? What does he see? What does he hear? What is the driver or the occupant saying? How are they acting? What are they doing? Let's pretend there's a warrant for this person's arrest. I stopped you because you ran a stop sign, but when I ran your name through the computer, I found out that you got a bench warrant out of Albany for, whatever. I got to arrest you. Well, that car isn't going to stay there. I got to have it towed. And when I go to tow your car, just like I search your person to protect your personal property and make sure it doesn't get lost or stolen, I have to do the same thing with your car. Because you may have valuables in there. You may have things in there that are important. And I'm going to do an inventory and I'm going to write it all down and document it. Because once that tow truck takes it away, I don't know who's in your car within the tow truck company. So when I pop the trunk, and that's what I find, well, things just got a little more complicated, right? Things just got a whole lot bigger than running a stop sign. So that is often how bigger problems get found out and get caught and get brought to officers' attention. Things that started out pretty small turn into big things. So that's the third way. Most often it's because somebody calls. What is the first thing an officer has to immediately determine when they arrive at a call? And I've got it right there. Is this a police matter? People call the police and 911 for all kinds of things that are not a police matter. The officer may not take any action or give advice. That's a huge no-no. You can tell people what their rights are. You can tell people what the law is, but you cannot give them advice, especially legal advice, which is like, what do you think they should do in this situation? That's a big no-no. Because if somebody does what you say they should do and it doesn't go well for them, oh, they're coming right back to you and they're going to blame you. And you're not a lawyer. So be very careful about that, because sometimes we really want to be helpful and we think, that what they should do is pretty obvious or pretty common sense. So we'll just tell them, oh, just, you need to go here and do this and do that. Really watch yourself with giving any kind of advice. And as far as people calling about things that are, my husband tells the story of a woman who called because her son would not get up and go to school. And there was another time, a different family, I think, but a woman called because her child would not fold his socks properly. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. People call the police for all kinds of things. So you need to find out, is this a police matter? If it is, fine. Let's deal with it. If it's not, you're going to say those exact words. Ma'am, sir, I'm sorry. I wish I could help you, but this is not a police matter. And you can direct them in the right place. That's not the same thing as giving an advice. If you feel like, maybe, if your child is having difficulty at school, perhaps, you can reach out to the school and talk to their guidance counselor or whoever they have. You can always refer them to community services. In fact, you should, especially when it comes to mental health problems, addiction problems, just family problems. There's lots and lots of community resources, and a lot of people don't know what those are. They don't know where or who. They don't have the information. So police officers become pretty versed in what resources are available in their community, and they often will give out cards, with information on who somebody can call. So, getting almost to the end here. If it does concern the protection of life or property, then it is a police matter. And from that point, the officer needs to find out where. And this first, before any other questions. And we've got there, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I know you guys have heard that a bunch of times in English class, right? But those are the questions for policing. Who, what, when, where, why, how. But the where first, because it has to have happened in your jurisdiction. And that's another thing that happens all the time. Somebody will come into the police station. I need to make a report. My car got broken into. My wallet got stolen. All right, we'll get you an officer to take a report. And, you start getting down all kinds of information. You got the report half filled out. And then you ask, well, where did this happen? Oh, First Ave in Cohoes. If I was a Troy officer, for example, or North Greenbush officer, for example. Well, Cohoes is not our jurisdiction. This car was not broken into in Cohoes, or in our jurisdiction. It was in Cohoes. I'm sorry. You're going to have to go to Cohoes Police Department and make that report there. So that happens frequently. So just to save yourself and the citizen a bunch of time and aggravation, because they're going to be very frustrated if they got done telling you this big story and giving you all this information and then find out it was all for nothing. So make sure you find out where, and then you can ask all the other questions. And we're going to do a whole thing on incident report writing and narrative report writing, police report writing. I told you there's a lot of paperwork in our field. So police officers need to be many different people or roles depending on the person and the situation that they're dealing with. And just some examples, and I don't mean this literally, but figuratively. Sometimes a police officer is a teacher. Sometimes they're a counselor, sometimes they're a parent, sometimes they're a friend, and sometimes they're an enforcer. And if you look at this picture here, obviously you see an older man. He looks, like he might be homeless. He might be impoverished, poor. He may be in bad health. He may have mental health issues. Obviously, it looks like they're in a commercial area or maybe even a bathroom, public bathroom, or a subway or something like that. So what do you see with this officer? He's kneeling down. He's got stuff in his hands. I don't know what, but he's doing something to try to help this gentleman, whatever that is. So would you call him an enforcer right now? No. Maybe a counselor, maybe a friend, whatever we don't know what the situation is. But you have to keep this in your mind. You can't talk to everybody the same way, because it depends on the situation and it depends on who they are and what's going on. The whole idea is to be effective in doing your job, but also in solving problems. You're not going to solve problems if you use the wrong approach. So I really like this next picture. There's nothing to write down here, but in every single one of these, there's something different going on. In this top left picture, we have two officers that are goofing, goofing with these two guys. They look like teenagers. They're having fun. They're laughing. They're maybe roughhousing a little bit. That's awesome. That's community. That's building community. You have got to be a part of your community. And we'll talk about how do you accomplish that and how much of that is on you and is your responsibility and how much of that can you control. It's really hard. It's really hard to do what those officers are doing right now, having a good time, joking and developing a relationship with these two kids, when they're going call to call to call to call to call. They don't have time to do that. They would love to do that. Who doesn't want to, have fun and feel good about the people you're working with? But you have to have the time to do that. And so many departments, especially today, they don't have the time to do that. But that is definitely part of policing. It definitely is. If you guys think it's only about making arrests and writing tickets, that is not true. And that is not, if that's your only goal, you're not going to be cut out for this line of work. So let's look at some other pictures, what's going on. Now, I can't see this gentleman's face, but obviously from his body language, he's speaking and he's being pretty expressive. And the two officers that are listening to him, both of them have a pretty serious look on their face. So, I have to assume that whatever this citizen is talking to them about is a serious situation. So they're not laughing and goofing, and they're just listening. And that's important, really important. And obviously this officer is helping a citizen walk across the street. He's got a cane, looks like he's blind. You're not always there to do those things, but when that opportunity presents itself, that is why you're there, if you can. So this next picture, she's definitely not happy. Don't know why, but he's standing there and he's listening. And no matter what somebody calls you or what they say, because remember, we got that First Amendment, you're going to have to take it, and again, it goes back to the psychological that you had to take before you even got the job. Do you have the right temperament to deal with people who are really upset? And upset could be angry, could, upset, could be grieving, whatever the case may be. You are not going to be able to respond in kind. She starts screaming at you, you're going to scream at her. She calls you a name, you're going to call her a name. It doesn't work like that. Officers are held to a higher standard, and you have to hold yourself above that. And obviously that can get really difficult sometimes, really difficult, especially if you've had a whole bunch of those kinds of calls back to back to back. Keep it in your mind, though, what you say, how you say it. You're not going to be able to bring yourself to the level that the citizen is at. Okay. This picture, obviously, a tragedy has occurred, and these people are devastated and very upset, and this officer is trying to give comfort. That is, nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. Wish it happened more. I mean, not more tragedies, but, I wish that, officers were able or in a position to give comfort more often. This is building community and relationships. And then this one here and this one here, they're kind of the same, and both of these officers look pretty stern. This is definitely the enforcer. You will have to write tickets. You will have to make arrests. And you can't be so soft-hearted that you just, you don't do what you need to do. Because number one, that's an easy way to get hurt. It's an easy way to get somebody else hurt. So you need to be tough. You need to be firm when you need to be. And firm and tough does not mean rude and obnoxious. There's a line. If we were in class together and we will do this, you could think of an example of how you say something has a very different meaning. It could be the exact same words, but the way that you said it is the problem, or is a good thing. We'll talk about a lot of examples of that, and I've seen it. I've seen it where the officer had to tell somebody something that was going to be really hard to tell, but they did it in a way that the citizen could accept it easier. Or conversely, something that was not really that big of a deal, but the way the officer told the citizen was so just upsetting that they escalated the situation. So a lot of times your face, your voice, your words can be used to get the job done effectively. I'm not going to, if I need to make an arrest or I need to write you a ticket, that's going to happen. And I will treat you as respectfully as I possibly can, but it's still going to happen. So if I need to communicate that to you, that this is not a negotiation, I'm going to do that in whatever way I need to while still being professional. Okay, so there was a little example for you. I think you guys probably get the idea here. It's so much more fun when we talk about it together in person instead of me just yakking at you. Getting to the end. So, and I got the ear here so you don't have to write this down. Police officers must always stay in control of their emotions. They must not react with anger or be unprofessional when dealing with angry, hostile, violent subjects. They are held to a higher standard than everyone else and are expected to be able to control themselves. Remember, today we are all on video or camera somewhere all the time. All the time. So I'm not gonna say too much more about all that because that's what I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about. So just remember these things and think about these things. This next slide actually is a video of a Maine state trooper. It's a pretty old video now, but it's pretty famous in law enforcement circles. I'm gonna play it in class and we can have a giggle. Actually, this trooper deserves an award he stopped this motorist and had to give the motorist a ticket. And the motorist maybe has some mental health issues, and he had quite a lot to say to that trooper. But the trooper just kept his calm, and he like never reacted. He kind of kept his voice at the same tone the whole time. It's just great. You really need to see it. And then I have some questions here. And then the last slide is another video. This is a situation where actually the officer was at fault, and the officer, the way he said some things, his tone of voice escalated a situation that didn't need to be escalated. And we will look at that. So I have two examples of, one is the officer is doing the right thing, and the other one, the officer is not, and looking at that difference. So thank you for listening. Thank you for taking your notes down. And this will be the end of week 5.